Hi. It started with a sigh, not a loud one. Not the theatrical kind you make when someone cuts you off in traffic or when the coffee spills on your shirt just before a meeting. No, this was the quiet kind, the kind that slips out when you think no one's listening, the kind that says more than words ever could. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, tying her hair up into a messy bun. Her back was to me, but I heard it. That sigh? I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment something shifted inside me. The moment I started noticing things that I probably should have seen long before. I asked her if everything was okay. She laughed. "You're overthinking again," she said, brushing it off like it was nothing, like I was being silly for caring. I nodded. I always nodded. That was part of the problem. See, I'd always been the one to smooth things over. If there was tension, I'd crack a joke. If she was upset, I'd bring her favorite pastry from that little bakery near the office. If I sensed distance, I leaned in closer. I didn't know that sometimes people pull away not because they're overwhelmed, but because they're already gone. That night, I lay awake next to her, watching the ceiling fan spin in lazy circles. Her breathing was steady, peaceful even, but I couldn't shake the weight in my chest. Something wasn't right, and I couldn't name it, which made it worse. Like trying to chase a shadow that kept shifting just out of reach. Over the next few weeks, the signs became harder to ignore. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. The way her phone never left her side, not even when she showered. How she laughed louder at texts than at anything I said. How she stopped asking about my day. I brought it up once. Carefully. Over dinner. She was picking at her salad, not really eating. "Do you feel different? About us?" I asked. She blinked. "Where's this coming from?" "I don't know. You feel far away lately." She scoffed, then smiled like I was a child with a wild imagination. "Babe, you're overthinking. Again." That word. Again. Like I had a history of making mountains out of molehills. Maybe I did. Or maybe she just knew how to make me doubt myself. Still, I dropped it. Because when someone tells you you're imagining things, and you want to believe them, you find a way to convince yourself they're right. You make excuses. You fill in the gaps. You turn your gut instincts into passing paranoia. You become your own gaslighter. Then one night, she left her diary on the kitchen counter. That was strange enough on its own. She kept that thing like a sacred object, always tucked into her bedside drawer, always snapped shut with a tiny brass clasp. I only knew it existed because I'd seen her writing in it sometimes when she thought I was asleep. I never asked about it. It felt too personal, too private. But that night, it was just there, out in the open, spine bent slightly from use. A corner of a page peeking out like it wanted to be read. I stood there for a long time, just staring at it. My hands were wet. I'd been doing the dishes. I dried them slowly on the dish towel, heart pounding like I'd already done something wrong. It felt like a trap, like she'd left it there on purpose, knowing I'd see it. But why would she? To test me? To punish me? To confess something she couldn't say out loud? The silence of the kitchen was thick. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. I reached for the diary. My fingers hesitated at the edge of the cover. I knew I shouldn't. I knew. But then again, I also knew something was wrong. Something she wouldn't tell me. Something I had to find out, even if it meant breaking her trust, because she'd already broken mine. I just didn't have the proof yet. So I opened it. Not from the beginning. That felt too intrusive. I flipped toward the middle, to a random page, hoping for something innocuous. A list of errands. A half-written poem. Something to ease the guilt clawing at my chest. But the first words I read? "I can't look him in the eye anymore." I froze. The next line hit harder. "He's still kind. Still trying. It makes me sick." I didn't breathe. I couldn't. I flipped another page. "Sometimes I wish he'd just stop. Stop asking how I am. Stop pretending like we're okay. He doesn't see it. He never sees it." I closed the diary. My hands were shaking. I leaned against the counter, trying to steady myself. Those words, they weren't angry. They weren't even cruel. They were cold. Disconnected. Like she wasn't writing about a person, just a weight she carried. Something she wanted to shed. I put the diary back exactly where I found it. When she came home that night, she kissed my cheek, poured herself a glass of wine, and asked what I wanted to watch. I said, "Whatever you want." Because I didn't know what else to say. Because I didn't want to believe it yet. Because a part of me was still hoping there was some other explanation. But deep down, I knew. The pages told a story she never wanted me to read. And I had just opened the first chapter. The next morning, I woke up before her. I sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, hands folded like I was praying. Maybe I was. For clarity, maybe. For courage. Or for the strength to pretend like everything was normal for one more day. She stirred behind me, murmured something about coffee, then rolled over and pulled the blanket tighter. She didn't notice I hadn't slept, that I'd sat in that same position for hours, staring at the same spot on the wall, trying to convince myself that what I read was just venting. A bad day, a fleeting thought, but something had shifted. In me, in us. And suddenly, I couldn't stop seeing the cracks. She was distant in ways that made too much sense now. The emotional silence, the late nights, the sudden guilt-driven sweetness that came out of nowhere, like the surprise dinner she cooked the previous week, or the spontaneous, "I love you" texts during meetings. Those were bookmarks, I realized. Guilt trying to cover its own tracks. The next time I had the chance, I went back to the diary. Not with curiosity, with dread. She left it on the nightstand while she showered. I heard the water running, the soft hum of a song she liked playing from her phone. I opened it with trembling hands, flipping carefully through the pages, like they were made of glass. Like the truth might cut me if I wasn't careful. One entry stood out. "He asked me again tonight if I'm okay." I lied. I said I was tired. I think he believed me. He always does. That's part of the problem. Another, a week later. "Sometimes I think I loved him once, but I can't remember what that felt like anymore." And then the one that hit the hardest. "I kissed Ryan again. I know it's wrong. I know. But with him, I feel something. With him, I feel alive. With my husband, I just feel stuck." Ryan. The name meant nothing and everything at once. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there, diary still open, chest heavy like I was underwater. The ink on the page wasn't fresh, but the wound it left was. Ryan. I started replaying conversations in my mind. The coworker she mentioned once, casually. The gym she started going to again, the one Ryan recommended. The work conference she attended out of town, where she came back oddly quiet but unusually affectionate, like she was trying to make up for something I didn't even know she'd taken. I shut the diary and placed it back like it had never been touched. Then I got up and looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look like a man who'd just learned his wife was in love with someone else. I looked like someone who'd been asleep for a long time and had finally woken up. That day, I didn't confront her. I didn't even hint that I knew. I needed time. Time to think. To understand. To decide who I wanted to be in the face of betrayal. She made spaghetti for dinner. We sat across from each other at the table. She laughed at something on her phone and showed it to me, a meme I didn't even register. I smiled, nodded, played the role she'd grown so comfortable seeing me in. Inside, I was unraveling. I started observing more closely, quietly collecting the evidence that had been hiding in plain sight. Receipts from places we'd never been together. A keychain on her bag with an unfamiliar logo. The way her phone always seemed to be on Do Not Disturb after 8 p.m. And her diary, it became a map. Every few days, I'd skim the latest entry. Always brief, always indirect, like she was trying to confess without fully admitting the truth. "I'm scared he knows. Ryan says I should tell him soon. I don't know if I'm strong enough to leave." That last one lingered. It was the line that told me this wasn't some fling. It wasn't something she planned to end. She was in it. Emotionally, physically, all in. She was already halfway out the door, and I'd just been holding it open. And still, I didn't hate her. I was hurt. God, yes. But I didn't hate her. That was the strangest part. I loved her. Or maybe I loved the version of her I thought I knew. The woman I built a life with. The one I held on hospital beds and kissed under fireworks and promised to grow old with. She wasn't here anymore. Maybe she never really was. She was just a character in a story I had convinced myself was real. I thought about confronting her 100 different ways. At dinner. In the car. On a walk. But every time I imagined it, it felt wrong, like shouting in a church. Like trying to fix something sacred after it had already been shattered. So I did what she probably never expected me to do. I began planning my exit. Quietly. Carefully. Not to punish her, but to preserve myself. I opened a private bank account. Talked to a lawyer. Not to burn things down, but to prepare for the storm I now knew was coming. I started making copies of tax records, bank statements, insurance documents. The essentials. All the while, she kept writing. And I kept reading. And one night, late, after she fell asleep with her phone still buzzing with messages I didn't have to read, I picked up her diary one last time. I flipped to the most recent entry. It was shorter than usual. I think I'm going to tell him tomorrow. I can't live this lie anymore. He deserves the truth. My hands trembled, not from anger, from heartbreak, because the woman I loved was finally going to break my heart out loud. But she was too late. I already knew. And I wasn't waiting to be broken. I was already walking toward the door. Morning came soft and slow, like it knew something I didn't want to face. She was humming in the kitchen, that same off-key tune she always sang when she made eggs and toast, her Sunday ritual. I stood in the hallway, watching her silhouette through the glass of the pantry door, thinking about how familiar she looked, how strange that familiarity could feel like a lie once the truth was known. She turned when she saw me, smiled. "Morning," she said. "I made coffee." I nodded. "Thanks." She was different that day, nervous. Her words caught in her throat. She barely touched her breakfast. I watched her try to work up the courage all morning, like someone about to jump into cold water. She kept glancing at me. I kept pretending not to notice. I already knew what she wanted to say. She was going to tell me about Ryan, about the affair, about how she didn't feel the same anymore, how she'd fallen out of love, how she thought we'd grown apart. All the lines people rehearse when they want to soften the truth. But I had no use for softened truths anymore. By noon, we were both in the living room. She sat on the edge of the couch, fidgeting with her sleeve. I stood near the window, hands in my pockets. "I need to talk to you," she said finally. I nodded, kept my eyes on the backyard. The wind was stirring the leaves. Everything looked so calm. You'd never guess a storm was just seconds away. She took a breath. "I haven't been honest with you." I didn't say anything. There's someone else," she said, and her voice broke on the word someone. "It's been going on for a few months. His name's Ryan." I turned to face her, not with anger, not with shock, just a steady kind of silence. "I didn't plan it," she continued. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far, but it did. And I don't know who I am when I'm with you anymore. It's like I'm drowning." She wiped her eyes. "I know I've hurt you. I'm so sorry." I sat down across from her. For a long time, I said nothing, just studied her face like I was seeing it for the first time. "I read your diary," I said quietly. Her eyes went wide. The color drained from her face. "What?" "I didn't mean to at first, but you left it out. I read it." She looked away. Her hands dropped into her lap like she didn't know what to do with them. "I know more than you think," I continued. "I know you've been gone for a while now, long before Ryan. I just didn't want to believe it." She opened her mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to apologize again, but I held up a hand. "It's okay," I said. "You don't have to lie anymore. I'm not here to argue, or beg, or fight for something that's already gone." She looked at me, her eyes shimmering. "So what now?" I stood up. "I'm leaving," I said. "I've already talked to a lawyer. I've already made arrangements. You don't have to worry about anything. I'm not coming after you. I'm not here for revenge." She blinked, like she hadn't expected that, like she'd braced herself for war and didn't know what to do with peace. "I just want my peace back," I added. "And I think you want yours too." She nodded, slowly. Tears fell silently onto her lap. I walked to the bedroom and picked up the small duffel bag I'd packed the night before. Just clothes, some books, essentials, the things that mattered or used to. I left my keys on the table. As I walked out the door, she called my name. I turned. "I never stopped caring," she said, "even if it doesn't look like it." I gave her a long look. "I believe you," I said. "But love without honesty isn't love. It's just a story we tell ourselves." And then I left. That night, I checked into a small cabin about an hour out of town. Just trees, wind, and quiet. I sat on the porch and watched the sun disappear behind the hills. I thought about all the little things, the diary, the sigh, the breakfasts, the silence. How love didn't end in flames, but in footnotes. Unspoken things. Unfelt touches. I thought I'd feel empty, but I didn't. I felt clean. Hollow, yes, but not broken. Like I'd finally scrubbed off something heavy that I'd been carrying for too long. She said I was overthinking, that I was paranoid. But her diary, those pages told the truth. They told a story she couldn't say aloud. A confession written in quiet ink. A goodbye she didn't have the courage to speak. And now, I carry that story with me. Not out of anger, but as a reminder. That silence has a language. And if you listen close enough, you'll hear everything they never meant to tell you. Bye-bye.